Hey everybody, this is Richie from the Metal Cell podcast. I'm delighted to welcome Yurt to the show. I've got Stephen, I've got Boz, and I've got Andrew or Bushey. Which would you prefer?
Bushey.
Bushey, okay. And my co-host Howard as well. Thanks everybody for joining me tonight. And we've got a good few things to cover. The most important one is your upcoming release, which is Upgrade to Obsolete. Congratulations on it, and thanks for sending me the promo. I'm absolutely blown away by it, really. It's a fantastic piece of music. And so we're going to just maybe cover that. And for fans that don't know too much of the band that followed the show, we might go into a brief history of your band as well, if that's cool.
All good.
Yeah.
Excellent stuff, lads. So is it true that you started out in 2006 as a side project to other bands, or?
Yeah.
Okay, so you might talk about that.
Myself and Andy were playing in a band called Estelle at the time, and I think Andy and Boz had been in a band called the Steam Pig for about 10 years. So we'd spoken about playing prog, basically, kind of playing, fancy heavy metal at some point. So Andy and Boz, if I remember correctly, kind of started putting pieces together and asked me to play drums, and so it ran alongside Estelle for about 6 years and other various bits we've done, but 2006 would be correct.
Cool. And Boz, were you always a bass player?
Yeah, pretty much. I've been playing the bass. Well, I've owned the bass since about 89. So, yeah, pretty much. Always been a bass player. You see, when I was kind of growing up and around people who were playing in teenage bands, nobody played the bass. And, everybody was a bedroom guitarist. They all wanted to be Kirk Hammett or whoever. And, those weren't my people. My guys were kind of like Philip Lynott and Jah Wobble and Dee Ramone, and they're all bass players,
Yeah.
So Lemmy, of course.
Yeah.
And so it just seemed easy, 4 strings, how difficult can it be? Of course, you learn the hard way when you start doing it, that if you want to do anything that's in any way interesting, it does get difficult quite quickly,
And when did you jump to 5-string?
When we started doing Yurt, probably maybe the first, it had been in my mind, but the first few practices I probably played Andy's 4-string, because the one that I had been playing previously had basically ground to a halt. It was I think it was probably up on bricks at that stage. But yeah, jumping to a 5-string, it just seemed like it seemed like a novelty thing to do, but also it just kind of suits. I'm kind of untrained, so it kind of suits the way I play the bass, and it worked out really, really well for me,
Yeah.
It's really cool to think that, you guys have been going since the late 80s and into the 90s and kind of been through it all, really, when you think about it. But what struck me about listening to the link that Richie sent me is it's really enthusiastic. And I was quite shocked to see that you'd been going back so far in bands like Frost and Ogre. I remember seeing Ogre and Sally Longs about 20 odd years ago, and it's great to see an album come towards you from a bunch of guys who have obviously been doing this for a very fucking long time. Because it must be a grind. How do you keep it interesting? How do you keep that fire burning? How do you keep that enthusiasm going?
Well, just to address the point there, those bands, Frost and Ogre were friends of mine from when I was growing up. They had previously been in a band called Frost. I had nothing to do with that. They would be a little bit older than me, but we're all kind of early 90s by the time we were kind of out playing gigs or whatever. In terms of enthusiasm, I don't know, whatever interest, whatever drives people to play music. I mean, the interest is still there. We know a lot of people who have sort of been around in our time doing it, who've kind of dropped off for whatever reason, families and work and moving and all that sort of thing. But I don't know. I don't know. Don't really analyze whether there's a specific reason why we seem to be, why we have that longevity. You know.
Would friendship come into it by any chance?
It would for me. I think I'd be very comfortable with Boz and Bushey, like, because we played together for so long. We know each other inside out musically, I think, at this stage, and it's always been, we've always seen it as long term. I think there's never been kind of a rush to get anywhere with anything. We take our time, we do what we do, and we'll get to where we want to be eventually. So I think that's the slower pace might help as well. We're always working on something. We're always moving forward, but it's that might help, I think, in a way, to keep your enthusiasm going. Because I see myself as a lifer in music. Like, I'm playing 3 bands, and that's what I do. You know, like, it's just I can't see myself ever not playing music. You know.
And Bushey, would you ever have thought about extending Yurt to an extra member?
No way. It's difficult enough with 3 of us, you know, without having to teach this nonsense to someone else. Oh yeah. So, joke on the side. No, we think the 3 of us, it works. It works very well. We've got kind of a weird little chemistry, you know.
Yeah.
And having played in other bands with Andy, where we've added people and taken people away, you're always kind of better with the core. You'll always come back to the 3 or 4 people, you know. So I think someone else, like a second guitarist, to just make it busy. You know, we don't need another member.
Yeah.
At the very beginning, we had considered trying to bring somebody in on keyboards, synths, that sort of thing, but we didn't know anybody who we really wanted, who we could tolerate being in a room with, you know. It just made sense to kind of stick as like a power trio and work from there, you know. It's enough, like I said, it's enough to manage people and kind of corral everybody into the same room. I mean, that can be difficult, you know.
Well, Howard, you know all about that, playing in the Magna P in a 5-piece.
Yeah, it is what it is. You just have to keep, like Les was saying, you keep moving forward. But I think as the case is with the Magna P, we've been playing together in various forms for 25 years now, you know. And I think there is an element of, when you play with someone that long, you definitely reveal parts of yourself to them, and it's reciprocated. And that can be a difficult thing to open up to somebody else to come in and have a go at. You know, so longevity does require help from like-minded people, I think.
Yeah.
And I think
I agree with that.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of, I think, certainly for me, Annie, I can't speak for yours, but I'm pretty sure it's the same. Coming from the background we come from, which is kind of like a punk underground type thing, the goal is never to be like a big band or to, you know, be like a successful band or have the big supports. And I think a lot of bands get bogged down in that. And once you're bogged down in that, you're kind of compromised, because you start, if you're thinking, I have to do this to be a success, right? You know, we do believe that thing. If you can get into a room and make the music and record the music and release the music, that's a success in itself. Yes. You know, whereas now we think there's an awful lot of people think, oh, if we get the good support, or if we... You know what I mean? It's a hole, because you're just chasing a thing then, rather than making...
I think you're very much goal-oriented as a young person. You see the magic on TV of rock bands living the lifestyle or whatever it might be, and you think in some part of yourself that that's what you're aspiring to be. But I think there is a turning point that you get to, isn't there, where you realise that it's all just a big fucking lie, and if you're going to do this, it's going to be fucking hard. There's not much reward in terms of success, I guess.
Well, it's weird.
Success in creating with your friends and enjoying it, you know?
Yeah, I think from an early point, we, I guess because it was a kind of like a side project, because everybody was doing other bands when Yurt started, we were able to kind of separate out that kind of ambition that people generally associate with being with a band, you know, doing that sort of thing, like playing out a lot and, you know, chasing this gig and that gig and, you know, working on profile and all the rest. Just purely concentrated on what we were doing when we were all in the room together. And that was the most important thing, you know. It seems insular, and I know there's probably plenty of bands that it makes absolutely no sense to, because it almost seems like we kind of somehow don't exist because of that. But it's the way we just found that works for us, you know. I don't think if we had been kind of really pushing it for like to be a regular gigging band, we probably still wouldn't be. We probably wouldn't be going, you know. Still wouldn't. We wouldn't exist now.
Yeah. Like Boz, you're, I suppose, different to the rest of the lads, as in that you do the artwork for the albums as well. Is there parallels with being in Yurt and painting, in that you weren't able to hear the type of music you wanted to listen to and visually create your own artwork for the band, you know, that you weren't seeing the artwork that you would have liked yourself? So could you maybe talk about that?
Well, I mean, the fact that the covers for Yurt albums are done by me is just out of convenience. It's the fact that we can do it. We can keep everything in house. I mean, if one of us was a sound engineer, for instance, we'd probably be, well, maybe that might not work too well, but you know, it's because it's just another thing that's available to us that we don't have to rely on anybody else for. You know, it makes us self-sufficient, and you know, I guess I'd like to think I can come up with something that's presentable enough that you know, I think over the 5 albums, when you put them together, I'm starting to see it now, where there's a thing, there's a look, you know. I mean, I guess I've always been kind of aware of kind of developing that, but only really kind of starting to see it now. Kind of there's like a rhythm of kind of 5 CDs, you know. It takes that time to get it all together, and because it's only 5 released things, you know. Here we are in the 16th year, and finally understanding what it is, you know. That's very much a part of it, you know.
Yeah. Steve, what about you in relation to creating the music for Yurt as well? You certainly, I certainly wouldn't want to categorize you. I wouldn't even do it justice if I tried to categorize you, but you're quite happy with that anyway, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it's like, I think when we started, there was no kind of, let's do this genre, let's do that genre. It was basically, let's go for whatever ham-fisted version of prog rock, heavy kind of prog rock that we can manage as with our limitations as musicians, because none of us are trained as such. We're not like, you know, we're chancers really, like, but we're chancers who stuck with it. You know, I think so. It's like the way, maybe the way things are written is maybe a little unusual, because all of the song structures will come from Boz. They're all pretty much written on the bass up until this album. Anyway, okay. They were written on bass, and we basically build blocks on top of that. Like, and so it tends to fill out in kind of unusual ways. But now, on the newer stuff that we're working on for the 6th album, which we've already started kind of writing up for, Boz is starting to do some electronic demos, and we're working off an electronic template now at times, which I think it keeps things fresh and interesting for us, and it's a different way of going for it then, you know, it's a different way of doing it. Yeah. So we always try and keep ourselves interested. I think that's really important.
So long as he doesn't program you out, Bushey, you know.
Well, we have talked about that many times.
Yeah, you wouldn't get a fucking drum machine stupid enough.
That's true.
Oh my God. So, Boz, let's just talk about as well, because we're all old school here. You do have the DIY punk ethic as well, which I really appreciate coming through. And you had one of Ireland's longest running punk fanzines, Nosebleed.
That's right. Yeah.
From 1990 to around 2000, or
until 2002 or 2002, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, there's people watching and listening to this, would you believe, that probably haven't ever picked up a fanzine. So maybe you might just talk about that side that you stuck with for so long, and, you know, Because, like, I mean, I don't think you can get fanzines anymore, really. You used to be able to get them at kind of independent record stores and stuff, but that whole, and they'd be for sale at merchandising tables as well, but like that whole element, which was a huge thing when I was growing up, and Howard and all of us here, I'd say, maybe just talk about the whole idea of the nosebleed and fanzine and what it meant to you.
It ties in with everything creative that we're doing here. And I mean, Bushey did a fanzine as well. Maybe he can mention that as well. He did one or two issues of Sonic Boom? Three. I never saw 3 issues, but anyway, yeah, it ties in with everything creative we're doing. In that, when you're of a certain age, and you're listening to certain types of music, and you're seeing people, and it's not anything that you're ever going to achieve, but with the punk rock, with the punk thing and the punk ideology, it's what it would be like. It's more like a case of what people, I guess, would now call like open source culture, in that you don't just go watch bands, go home. Like a sort of the band's there and I'm here. The whole point in getting involved in that, or being in and around that ecosystem or whatever, is that you bring something to it. Mm-hmm. If you've got 4 mates in the world and you can pull instruments together, you find a bedroom and make a band, and if you can't do that, draw the posters for the band. You can't do that. Get a typewriter and some Tipex and some pieces of paper, and be the press for it.
Yes,
that's a wonderful thing. It's wonderful, especially when you're younger, and it makes everything seem so accessible. It's like you're contributing to this kind of microcosm of like culture, and it doesn't have to be something that's ever even kind of known outside your city or whatever. It's just, it might be something that's, your band might be seen by 50 people at most over a span of 2 or 3 years. You write fanzine or whatever, it might be read by 50, 100 people, and that's it. But that's a success, I mean, that's the whole thing. And the whole thing about it is, it's not one thing that's important. It's loads of different people doing these things, and then they're creating the a spread of music through a variety of bands, or creating an underground press through a load of different ideas photocopied. So that's the basic thought behind it all. I mean, for me, it was the extra thing for me was that it was a vehicle for artwork.
Yes,
and that was important, because it gave it a look. It meant I didn't have to just cut up the Irish Times and, use that as my graphics or whatever.
It's changed so much and so quickly. I mean, looking back at fanzine and even flyers for gigs, and that used to be part of the package of playing a gig, is you'd have a poster and a flyer and you distribute and whatnot. But it seemed like a far more visceral connection to what was happening in the city in terms of a cultural movement or a cultural thing. Whereas nowadays it seems it's online for 2 months before the gig. Let's say there's a little fucking avatar there, people will take photographs and forget all about it the next fucking day. I don't know, I remember going home from gigs in the Phoenix and Cork in the mid-90s and so on. You'd have your flyer, you'd have fucking fanzine, it was just different. You'd think about that gig for weeks. Now you go to a gig, it's
I think we've probably spoken about this before. I think the internet kind of changed how people engaged with that stuff. Like Boz said, it used to be, the goal was to kind of make something that contributed to this. Yeah. It was kind of a disparate group. You'd have like little scenes, but it was mainly one big thing. The crossover, where you might be able to pull 100 people to a gig. On a very good night, you might get 150 people. On a very bad night, you might get 10 people. But they were there, and all of those 150 people participated. And when they made art, or they made a fanzine, or they made music, it was for that group of people. And I think what the lie of the internet was kind of, people went, it opens it to everyone. But in doing that, I think people's goals become trying to get everything to everyone. You know, you've got a blog, people want everyone to read it, so it can dilute it in a way. And that when it was very local, it was quite immediate, and it gave the sense of a community or the sense of a scene or the sense. Whereas now, again, to go back to bands, Luke, we were saying earlier, bands kind of aspirations have changed. That's because when we would have started playing gigs in the mid-90s, and the other lads maybe a bit before me, you didn't really have those aspirations. You could play in a couple of, there was towns in Ireland you could play in. Bands weren't going, oh, we'll go on tour in America, or we'll do like a 40-day tour of Europe, and we're going to put out our album digitally, and I got 1,000 hits and blah, blah, blah. You knew it was small. And in a way, because it was a lot of artists playing to other artists, if anything new came out, I would just buy it. If a new tape came out, I'd buy it. I didn't necessarily have to love the band. I kind of saw it as participating in this thing, whereas I think post the internet and post some bands that would have been our peers at some points getting some attention, it kind of just changed the demographic. It started pulling people in who maybe thought of it in more terms of like, we're the audience, they're the band.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of that way of thinking just ingrained in us in the way we operate in Yurt, in that, we don't have any aspirations to like one day play Roadburn or whatever, or, go
be nice.
tour in Europe or whatever. There's just no appeal, I don't want to, I personally have no interest in kind of celebrating myself in that way, I mean, the interest is in continually moving forward and creating stuff. In that the album, the new album, the one that we've just brought out, we are pretty much at the end of that cycle of songs. So, by the time we release something, the songs are finished. We're not releasing the album and going, okay, great, now we can go out and play these to the world, We're kind of like, we'll do the launch gig and they'll, Christ, we don't have to play those songs ever again.
Not again.
Moving forward with new stuff,
That's amazing. I mean, so playing live, like obviously that makes sense because you don't seem to tour much. So maybe Steve, you could talk about the elements that come into play for ye as a band when you kind of have to promote an album like this.
Yeah, it's I wouldn't go as far as saying it's a chore sometimes to play live, because I think we played a gig last month. I have to say I wasn't looking forward to doing it, but when we did it, I really enjoyed playing live. So it was nice in that way. But the problem is a lot of rehearsal goes into getting a set together.
Okay.
Like we'd have to put a lot of work into rehearsing that set to get it to where we wanted it to be, to pull the gig off. And sometimes like you can almost feel resentful that you're not moving forward with your new material when you're constantly like rehearsing for gigs, you're rehearsing sets for gigs. Like that's, as Boz was saying, that moving forward is really, really important to us. And as long as we can feel as though we're kind of in perpetual motion, it keeps us going. But if we were to go on tour or play a ton of gigs, we'd have to stop creating, because we'd have to make sure we're on the button in terms of having our set together. So it's kind of detrimental to the way we want to work. So there's no major appeal for any of us really to be like a busy gigging band. It's nice to play a few here and there every now and then, but
it can be a real labour getting those songs ready when you're fucking sick of playing them. And
yeah,
I do it myself in the Magnapina. Every set is different, I guess. And if you write a song to practice beforehand, we're going to play it at the fucking gig. But I do find that if you gig a lot, it does get in the way of progression quite often. You're stopping to fucking check yourself and be on form with the previous songs, which feels like 2 steps back and 1 step forward quite often.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I can totally get on board with that,
Yeah, I think for us as well, it's complicated stuff. And for me, it's quite physical. So as much as I enjoy playing them, don't get me wrong, like Andy said, that gig we played recently, it was fucking great, to see people enjoy it. But there's a lot of work in one of our sets. We can play that stuff for 50 minutes or something for me. You know, it's exercise, you know. You might listen to it and go, there's not a lot to it, but it's a lot. It's fairly
They're
relentless.
long songs as well. I mean, you're averaging, 8 minutes, 12 minutes a song. Which is
and, you know, they're relentless. Like, it's fucking, it's like this for 50 fucking minutes. So, I'm old now. I'm 45. It makes me sore.
He's old at 45. That's hilarious.
Oh, yeah. You're just saying like as you're older than me, man.
We've aged him horribly. That's what it is. We've worn him down in the last 16 years.
I used to have hair. I was fucking 6'4".
And is the bass getting heavier, Boz, as you're playing it?
I upgraded my bass this year, so the one I have now is lighter. That was one of the. It was one of the things I was looking for. You know, there's no reason to have something that fucking weighs like a 5-string Music Man. You know, but it's just 10 tons of bass.
Yeah.
What's the point? You know.
Yeah, exactly. And what gear did you bring into the recording of Upgrade to Obsolete? You might kind of start with you, Steve. What were the main guitars and effects and pedals?
The main difference for this is all the other albums I've Marshall JCM 2000 head that I've used, and I managed to pick up this old Peavey head, which is like a kind of a late 70s, early 80s thing, and it's got a really kind of unique sound. So I started using that. So my guitar sound is slightly different to on the previous albums. It's probably, I don't know if it's really noticeable for outsiders, but I'd notice it like myself. And yeah, started using a different distortion pedal a while back, which has changed the sound a little bit slightly as well. In terms of guitars, I've been using the Gibson SG on the same Gibson SG on everything that we've ever played, but I have PRS custom as well, which I bought a couple of years ago, which I used. So I 2 guitar tracks basically. I tracked one on the Gibson and one on the PRS. Actually, no, I tell a lie. The Gibson is not on this album. It's just the PRS.
Oh.
It was in the hospital, and now it's out of the hospital. So I get my bands mixed up because I'm just in the middle of recording with another band at the minute, and I used the Gibson on the PRS on that. So yeah, I just too much music, basically. But nothing too radically different, I don't think, in terms of just But the guitar head is the main difference. So sound would be slightly different if anyone's looking for it. I think.
They'll find it. Boz?
I'm not so much of a gear person, I'm very kind of, what I recorded was the one bass I had, the one 5-string bass I own, which was like a Aria Pro 2 jazz bass, and we had problems when we went into record. It turned out that the couldn't tune couldn't tune one of the strings properly because of the way the bridge was set up. So it was just stress on the day, So that's the reason I changed my bass after recording. So it was a big drag, I probably should be it made me a little bit more conscientious about gear, but before that, I've just whatever works without, interference and noise. It's again, I guess it comes from playing in punk bands for years and stuff like that. I don't worship gear. I don't know the names of anything that I own.
The electronic side of things?
Oh, the electronic side of things, that would be most of the synths that we use are Novation and Korg.
Okay.
So again, I know what they are, but just now when you put me on this spot, I can't rattle off the names of what they are, But those are the two, they're kind of like just mid-range kind of just synths. I don't use any anything modular. So it's just stuff to do the job with, I wouldn't start messing around with kind of software synths and everything like that. I think there has to be something kind of tactile to go with my ham-fisted playing, where you tend to find different ways of doing things when you're recording purely by accident, by messing around with a physical keyboard, whereas I was doing everything with a MIDI keyboard and just, messing around with stuff, basically staring at a computer screen and changing values and all the rest. That's not something I want to get into, you know.
Yeah, I'm surprised now to hear that, because you've a solo project as well, Rogue Spore. That's more or less electronic as well. Are you recording demos? What program are you using to record demos on? Reaper or one of those, GarageBand?
It goes into Audacity.
Oh, Audacity! Wow.
Yeah. Record absolutely. Even the recording the synths for Yurt. It's all Audacity, because everything is just. I don't want to do anything with the sound once it's gone into the computer. You know, everything is organized on the actual synthesizer. You know, it just seems like a headache. It seems completely joyless to be getting into kind of like fiddling around with software, and I'd rather be making the music.
I think you have a companion down there in Howard. He's smiling away there.
It's interesting. I'm absolutely envious of it, because, you know, I've went through a lot of the time with that sort of attitude towards playing gigs. Is like, you make do with what you fucking have, and that was kind of the times it was as well, I guess. You know, gear wasn't readily available. If there was a combo at the gig, that's what you were fucking using, and you got on with it. But as time went on, got a job and got good gear and realized the worth of it. But it is a fucking head wreck. It is a little bit joyless, because you think about it quite often. You're constantly trying to chase tone, and all chasing tone is just evolving your tone. But the more amps you kind of go through, the more amps I've gone through, it's fucking, you have your head turned left and right every fucking 20 seconds if you let it. I think there's a point comes where you have to just say, right, fuck off, I'm just going to use this for the next fucking 5 or 6 years, see how I go. But I'm envious of that sort of, to still have that ability to just say, yeah, fuck it, these are the tools I've got to use, and this is what I'm going to use, this is what's available to me, and I'm going to make the best of it.
I find that being obsessed with gear, I've been seeing it since I was a teenager. Being obsessed with gear gets in the way of having ideas for the actual music. You know, I can't tell you the amount of people who played guitar around me when I was a teenager, and they would kind of boast about being able to play this Megadeth solo, or, you know, the bass solo off that Metallica album or whatever, and none of them were ever in bands, you know.
Yeah,
they'd like upgrade the guitars and upgrade the pedals and amps all the time, but I never left the fucking bedroom. I mean, that's not music. That's wanking, you know.
Yeah.
I try to keep things simple gear wise as well. Like I've seen people go down those rabbit holes, and it's just like I'll try something out if I'm offered it, basically. So like I got offered. I'll try this distortion pedal from a guy Moose who makes custom pedals up in Wild Rocket. And tried it out, and it was just magnificent. So I was like, right, that's for me. But there's no, you know, there was no kind of, I have to try these 10 other ones at the same time, or I have to try these 4 amps in sequence or whatever. It's like, it does get distracting. As long as whatever I plug into, if I can get the sound that I'm reasonably happy with, I tend to stick with it. I tend not to tweak too much, because I'm not particularly good with all that technically. So I'll kind of, if I get what I like, I'll just say, yeah, grand, we leave it at that, and just move with that for as long as I can, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's the awful merit to it. I mean, I went through a phase of pedals and all that kind of crack, and at the moment I'm using a delay pedal and an overdrive pedal, and that's it. And that's all I've used for the last 5 or 6 years. Fine, when you're playing live and something goes wrong, fucking, there are 2 things to look at, you know. Yeah,
that's what I do. I use a multi-effects unit for like various bits of effects that I use, because I can't have a pedal board with 10 pedals on it. It just drives me nuts, you know. It's too much.
Little fucking patch cables and...
Yeah. It's engineering, basically, and I'm not an engineer.
Well, we haven't sent you to sleep yet, no? You're still with us?
Awesome.
He got new fancy cymbals recently. You should ask him about that.
Okay. So you did purchase, you did?
Oh, I did. Yeah. I bought a set of Moynal Dark Custom Classics, and they cost me fucking too much money, man. I did €1,100 for a set of samples.
Wow.
But look, I have good technique. The stuff I was replacing was about 15 years old, so yeah.
There you go, man.
You know, I'll get a good run out of them.
Okay, cool. So let's go into the album. Again, what can I say? Congratulations. I absolutely love it. And the first track is one of my favorites. So it's called Paralyze. And is it the obvious first track for all of you? Was there any debate in the opening track being Paralyzed before I play it?
No, they were all, I think with this one, it was very unusual in that I think with the exception of the last two tracks, everything is in the order that it kind of came into band practice.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that we decided to do it that way. It just turned out to be a logical sequence for the album anyway.
Mm.
So it's just a coincidence.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say Paralyzed it's the one where every time we write an album, we finish one, and then there's always the first thing that we're kind of working on.
Okay.
So it's the one that you tend to be sick of the most. By the time, it's the one you've been playing for like 2 years before you record it, so.
When we did the album launch for Yurt 4, Paralyzed was the first song that we opened that gig with.
Yeah, so it's around a while, it's 5 years, 4 years.
To us, it's from then and needs to kind of be resigned to the slag heap at this stage,
There always seems to be a transitional song between albums. Every album, I think, has been like that. There's been one that's almost made it onto the previous album, but not quite. And that will become the building block for the next album. And that's what Paralyze is for this one, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll give it a spin here then. Yeah, it was so hard to pick out like clips of a minute and a half for you lads, but I just chose that section. The opening of it, no, again, I'm going to throw bands at you just for the crack for the next 7 songs, or 6 songs. So the opening there, I got a lovely Faith No More buzz off it, back in the Angel Dust days. So that was my take in it. And would any of you like Faith No More? Or?
I love that album.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I was thinking of it when we were writing the song, but I love that album.
Yeah.
Faith No More for me, I'm an Introduce Yourself fan.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
That's when I came to Faith No More. And it's the one I always go back to. That kind of lost me for a bit in the 90s. I've since gone back to all that stuff. And yeah, I mean, I guess it's not a band I really think of much in terms of my bass playing or writing songs or anything like that. But we probably, having said that, Faith No More is an interesting one because their musical influences, the things that they, from that era of Faith No More, there's probably very, very similar things, like Killing Joke, Public Image Limited, that sort of thing. Yeah. And that's definitely a direct line into Yurt,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the whole arcade vibe with the way you have the keys set up as well, it's continual through the whole album. Boz, why do you maybe have that effect running through the album for continuity and other things? Or
are you talking about the keyboard specifically on that song, or just in general on the album?
in general, it's like kind of tuning frequencies. It's never kind of prominent, but it's always in the background, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole thing about the synthesizers is because we don't, the only time that synthesizers are on your music is when we record. I mean, you see us playing live.
Yeah.
That's not there. It's just the three of us.
Yeah.
So there's no point in, writing something around a synthesizer or having it as a dominant feature to the point where it becomes something else, because it's not representative of us,
Yeah.
I mean, we sometimes kind of joke about shooting ourselves in the foot and doing exactly the wrong thing in terms of, in the great tradition, or in the tradition of all great prog bands, and doing an absolute wanky 80s type album, a la what Genesis and Yes did in the 80s sort of thing, So maybe that'll be our time to do a horrible keyboard album, But I'd need to find keyboards maybe of that era with truly disgusting sounds on them in order to do that, So, but yeah, it has to be the synthesizers, the keyboards. It has to be something augments the tracks rather than be a defining feature of them. Because if we let it be something, if we let it go to a point where it's kind of dominant, then it's not representative of what we're doing, I mean, you'd hear the album and then see us live, and it will be two completely different things, and that's
bands often fall into that trap.
Yeah. So it's a fun production thing to do. I mean, it's probably the thing that takes the longest in terms of putting together a Yurt album, because I can't play keyboard. So everything, if there's bits, there was runs, if there's anything that is not noise, that's actual playing, all that stuff was recorded note by note and built, pieced together kind of on a computer screen,
Yeah.
So it's like Lego.
Building block. And just maybe talk about black slabs of granite below, falling paralyzed on a mission, gunning for a takedown into paradise, psychometric red flag rain. Where were you heading with that?
I don't know. It's kind of hard to dissect Yurt lyrics in that. Like, that's kind of like a lone wolf type of thing, But a lot of the stuff is it's just kind of ideas, dream logic, dystopian ideas, that sort of thing, It's stuff that fits the music, in that there would be no point in us writing kind of bedwetter, kind of, songs of unrequited love or whatever, And we don't know anything about goblins and wizards and dragons and anything like that. We just don't, It's not part of our lives. So I think it's just observation, reading, documentaries, little bit scraps of information from everywhere, I mean, there have been times when I've had my moment where I've woken up and there's been an idea and I've written down a ream of text, and that's become lyrics, Now, that sounds so fucking pompous and pretentious. By the time it ended up in the track, it looked nothing like the original notes, of course, but that's where the idea comes from, and then you just develop it and develop it. It's just it's the kind of germ of it, So I think that's the same with all the lyrics, in that they start off being one thing. You might get a couple of lines, and then an idea sort of attaches itself to it afterwards, So if there's things in there that kind of don't make direct sense, it's probably because two things have been stapled together.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you, Baz, do you find the lyric writing and the vocals and so on, do you find it an uncomfortable process, or is it that it's uncomfortable to speak about it, if you understand what I mean?
No, I don't find it. The lyric writing, it takes a long time, because I don't want to be singing. I think in terms of Yurt, because there's so few lyrics. I mean, this is lyrics as opposed to kind of singing and doing vocals. There's so few lyrics that we kind of have to make them very bulletproof, Because they're only really going to stand out if they're bad, if there's like a stinker of a line in there or something. So that's always on my mind. And the other thing is obviously stuff that flows well, stuff that kind of works in terms of pacing, in terms of playing and singing at the same time. That is a big thing that comes into it, and that kind of shapes things in a big way. You know, you can't kind of force an idea onto something and then you just it just doesn't fit, you know, in terms of like you trying to have a kind of a certain rhythm to it. Because I mean, the vocals, there is a rhythm to it. I mean, the way we treat the vocals in Yurt is none of us are conventionally singers, you know, and
it probably took a while for you to develop together as singing partners as such. Like, do you sing over Steve?
It's a lot of kind of dual vocals, you know, and then there's little bits that I will kind of take myself because the lyrics, I generated the lyrics in the first place, so it's just the way it kind of pans out. I don't know.
It's worked so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I'm sure there is an answer to that, but I just don't think about it anymore. You know.
Yeah. Like Howard, you. Sorry, Steve.
Go ahead.
Like Howard, is that a hard process for you as well to come up with lyrics in relation to?
In watching Boz's reaction to the question, and it's something. It's I guess when I look at Boz reacting, it's how I feel I'd react. You know, I do enjoy the process of writing lyrics. I don't enjoy the process of trying to explain them to people, but it's one of those things that keeps me up at night at times when I'm at home thinking about it. And like you said, if there's a line that stands out to you, or if there's a sentiment that you've, you know, put forward in your head, and you're trying to figure out why is that there, and is it fucking worth sharing? Is it any good? And I don't know. You start to question yourself a little bit. But I find that enjoyable, I guess.
Yeah,
but when it comes to explaining it to people, it's very, very fucking difficult to articulate.
There's a song on the album, The Brand Evangelist, and there was a line in that, and I don't remember which one it was, but I remember having severe fucking difficulty with it. And I sat on it for fucking 2 or 3 weeks, and it was all I could think about, just getting that, like 2 or 3 words at the end of a line, trying to figure out what needed to be put in there, you know, and you just, you know, you think about it so much that you can't get rational results, you know. It becomes kind of stupid. So yeah, this, when you get kind of deep into that sort of thing, I mean, lyric writing mode, it kind of sits in your head a little bit too much to be kind of a healthy thing. You know, you tend to kind of like obsess about it a fair bit. Even though, I mean, the Yurt lyrics, there isn't like reams and reams of them. You know, we can fit everything we've written in the 2 kind of fold outs on the CD. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I don't kind of.
Steve, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I remember. Like, I just early on, I tried to write some lyrics. There's one song on the first album I wrote lyrics for, but it's not something I'm particularly good at. I find my lyrics are very contrived or something, and I never get to be able to convey what I'm trying to convey, so I just gave up on it because I think Boz is much better than me at it. So it works better if it's the one voice as well, you know, if it's the one lyrical style, it works a lot better. But in terms of how vocals work, like Boz will come in with the pattern or whatever, and I'll generally try and see, can I get some kind of off-kilter harmony or something to augment it? And we seem to have found something, because we're pretty limited vocally, like, so we seem to have found something that works for us, some kind of, I wouldn't even call it a harmony, that's kind of an insult to harmony, really, but it's whatever it is, it seems to work, and it seems to be something we're quite comfortable with these days. So
it reminds me of the Melvins quite a bit, and have a listen to the record. It was the first thing I disliked about listening to your record was the vocals, but it's testament. Like, listen to Jesus, I must be in a dozen times now, and on my 12th listen, the vocals are the thing I'm looking forward to in every song, you know?
Yeah.
Yes, some of it comes from early Hawkwind as well.
That's what I was going to say. It's
a big thing. I mean, I tend to, the way I kind of approach putting a vocal over a song is that you just find that kind of comfortable spot for your voice and sing flat directly across it, and then let Andy do the up down, find a the harmony or the kind of give it a bit of girth, you know.
Yeah.
I just don't have the vocal dynamics for that. I need to kind of find that one pitch that I can comfortably sing along to whatever I'm doing.
To my ear, a lot of it sounds like the kind of 1972, 1973 Hawkwind, and then like Metal Box era Pill, that kind of flat vocal that sits over the music rather than in around it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to play the second song, and it's the title track. It's Upgrade to Obsolete, and this is my favorite track, and that actually is my favorite vocals from me as well. So give it a spin, as I said. That's the super track, and I'm going to throw another band at you there. Well, a solo artist actually, Gary Newman, early Gary Newman, especially with the vocals. There's one for you. You can think about that. Can you hear any Gary Newman in the
Gary
singing?
Newman's definitely in my DNA. I think Dance by Gary Newman was one of the first records I ever owned.
Okay.
But that was kind of new romantic Gary Newman with kind of that sounded more like a Japan album than kind of a late 70s electronic album, you know. I mean, there's probably a lot of references in there that we don't think about at the time. That it's always kind of fascinating when other people hear things, and I like the fact that, you know, when you put something out into when you put something out into the public. Like earlier on today, I got a message on Facebook off a guy who's reviewing the album for me, and he wanted to run something by me. He goes, is it okay if I make this reference? And I was kind of like, I'm happy for you to do anything. We're happy to be getting the attention. It's really, I don't think I said it's really none of our business what other people write or to try and steer them in any direction of what they hear, you know. You like it, it's great. You don't like it, that's great as well. There's other music you can listen to. There's quite a lot of other music you can listen to, so there's no point in you know, don't stop here if it's not of interest to you, you know. But in terms of the synths, I mean, the electronic music is, I listen to a lot of electronic music, especially a lot of kind of old German electronic music, stuff like Cluster would be a big favorite of mine, you know. And Klaus Schulze, stuff like that. So that's why I like doing kind of those bits where we had kind of soupy, spacey, you know, it's an indulgence, but it's nice to be able to put them there, even if it's at the end of a song or in a little intermission or whatever.
Yeah,
you know?
you could go back further even, and the way Ray Mazurek with the Doors as well, that kind of the way he used to structure stuff as well with the keys. So, you know.
It's funny to say Gary Newman, like it's only listen to that song, that part there, and I'm just like, oh yeah, it does. That is there. See, so that happens to us quite a lot. Like somebody will point out something and say, oh, is that an influence, or is this, you know, this sounds like this, and we'd be like, oh yeah, that never occurred to us before. It's quite interesting to pick up on other people's perceptions on it sometimes.
Yeah, of course.
It's an interesting thing because it's hard to categorize you, which is, I know you're not happy with being categorized anyway, but I think the way to try to associate your music, in my brain, is to pick artists that I've heard over the years that sound a little bit like that. And it's kind of striking how many fucking artists are crossing across the top of the screen there in terms of what you're thinking of. It's reminding me a lot of Station to Station by David Bowie. Real Berlin 80s vibes in it, But that's just only one element. There's other... Geez, you could throw any fucking genre at this in terms of a name check, and you'd find the reference somewhere,
Yeah. What about the title, lads?
Upgrade to Obsolete.
Yeah.
As the title of the song or the title of the album?
And both.
Well, it became the title of the album because it was it just worked. It seemed like the snappiest one of the song titles, and we did that with the last album as well. It's the lazy way to pick an album title, to find a song, but obviously the song has to stand up in a way. If it's one that you're not kind of sure about, or one that's maybe a little bit kind of lesser than the other stuff on the album, then there's no point in picking that. But that one worked out well, and I always tried to pick them in terms of what kind of binds the thing together. This is getting into the idea of making the albums based around, having something conceptual going on there. Not that there's a true thread of like some big story that we concocted or whatever, but something that ties in with the artwork, or something that triggers an idea for the artwork, or ties in the whole album as a package, as a thing where it looks like there's something going on there. It's not just a bunch of songs about, there isn't a kind of a, we don't have an I'm in love with my car type song or whatever, I'm sure we could figure out a way of doing that as well. But the Upgrade to Obsolete, I guess it's about stupid obsessions with technology,
Yeah.
Or just, the bad of technology. And I'm not putting it down. I'm not fucking saying anything's crap. I think it's all wonderful, because I was there for all these modern conveniences that we all have, I think we all remember all of the age when we remember when this shit wasn't there, and it wasn't great, especially in thinking in terms of when we mentioned earlier about coming from a world of fanzines, and then, that being kind of pushed aside by access to Blogger and GeoCities sites and stuff like that. And then moving on to the whole world being on your phone. And before we came live tonight, you were talking about, people's obsessions with their phones. And, if absolutely everything, every piece of kind of culture, or every sort of reference in life that outside your work and sleep, if that's all being kind of just funneled down into a small gadget, it tends to be, they're just aesthetically a little bit kind of crap,
Yeah.
If that, in terms of like visually, in terms of, anything kind of artistic doesn't look good on a phone, whether it's photography, whether it's movies, whether it's just art or comic books or whatever. Music, forget it,
Yeah.
And
had you the art piece to represent that already, Boz, or did you come up with it from scratch, working off the title?
The album cover was done last year, so all the songs except... No, I think the album cover was done around the time that the Brand Evangelist was written. That was the last one in. So, it was done last year, late last year. So, it's just based on the kind of loose idea of, what people kind of... I don't know. I wanted to be kind of vague about it. I don't want to like sort of, put a solid idea down, go on record and say, this is exactly what it is. I mean, I have my ideas as well. The kind of character on the front is like we have a world now where people are kind of weird they grow up without any sort of organized religion, so they put other things in those places instead of being happy without it. Maybe that's the idea, and what those things are. So it's just like an imaginary figure, like hooked into whatever, you know.
About the colours, why did you go for orange and yellow, for example?
Because we haven't done it before.
Okay, nice.
I messed around with Photoshop in the background, and that came up, and it looked good. I want to do something fiery, you know.
Yeah. Okay. Nice.
We hadn't a lot of the work we've done in the past. I think that kind of red and yellow worked really well on the last album. There was mainly a brown background, but there was such a red and yellow, like a fiery color on that. So I kind of wanted to have it interlinked with that in a way, and that you're just kind of flipping it over and making that the color of the whole thing, and then lay something on top of that instead, you know?
Yeah. Oh, it definitely stands out. And Steve and Andrew, when he came up with the final product, delighted with it, yeah?
Yeah, always. It's always great. Like we don't even have to think about it. Like,
okay, that's great. That way,
it is. It's a real bonus. Like with other bands, you know, you're really head scratching over artwork or layouts and all that, and just with Boz, we just know it's going to be good, and it's great. Take a lot of stress off us. Well, me and Bushey, the number for Boz.
What else would he be doing?
And the great thing about those elements as well is this. I mean, what occurs after I was saying earlier about there being kind of a rhythm now that you see a few of them is, you know, there are instances where you have bands who have the same thing. They have an artist within the band. I mean, the typical example is Boyvod, of course, that, you know, there's a great rhythm, beautiful rhythm to all those album covers. And it makes the whole package very unique. That's definitely something that's in the back of my mind all the time, you know. You know, having that very visual component that kind of belongs very specifically to a band. Now, I have done covers for other people, but you know, that is a Yurt look. Now, if we were to go and turn around, I mean, like we've been threatening again, we need to go and do our Emerson, Lake and Palmer Love Beach album cover where we're all standing with shirts and medallions,
pastel suits.
You know, I've made mock-ups of those type of album covers. We haven't shared them. Well, maybe I've shared them on Facebook, but we haven't done it yet. You know, that will come with our crappy 80s synth album when we do it.
Class. Okay, we'll move on to the next track. The Book of Esophagus, track number 3. I hope I pronounced that right. You did some job on the drums in that song.
Yeah,
look,
you know, it's what I'm there to do.
He's a modest guy, lads. He's a modest guy.
It's. I think maybe, to be honest, I think if you're used to listening to kind of metal, you just don't hear those timings that frequently. But it's nothing very complicated.
Who are your heroes?
Music, I don't know, lots and lots and lots.
Would there be jazz in
there?
I
love Elvin Jones, who played with John Coltrane.
Okay.
He's one of my favourites. He's a fucking incredible drummer. But the majority of the stuff I would have grown up on, kind of standard stuff. Let me think. Bob, was it Bob number 2 who played drums in Devo? Really underrated, fucking incredible drummer. The guy on the first 4 or 5 albums. Nirvana. I thought Chad Channing was an incredible drummer, and Dave Grohl. So much stuff, like Dave Lombardo, obviously, for kind of those fast little fills. Tons and tons.
Yeah.
I'm leaving people out.
That's perfectly fine. You can kind of get the vibe on it. One of the most underused instruments in metal, in my opinion, is the saxophone. I am a massive fan of a dirty sax in stoner, sludge, rock, post-metal, anything. Who do I have to thank for playing the sax on this?
I don't know if you should be thanking me. I got myself one last year. I just wanted to try something new, a new kind of instrument. I've tried like over the years. I've had little goes at drums, little goes at keyboards, and I just thought, no, I want the sax, something completely different. So I can't play the saxophone. I cannot play it yet. So that was just random noise, basically, that was tracked. I haven't really had time to go and get lessons or anything like that. So we just said, right, let's see what happens. Let's go and try and track on it, see what happens. And what we got seems to suit the song. So there you have it.
Brilliant. Howard?
Yeah, that's my favorite song on the album, that track.
Really, it
reminds me a lot of the last Bowie album, Black Star. A lot of elements of the saxophone, the jazz drumming and funny time signatures and what, with the bass line, the do. Yeah, I'm all about that track. It was the first one that stood out to me as being exceptional.
Yeah, it's false time, man. It's 3/4, and then we have to do. Oh, I don't remember off the top of my head. I think we have to do 5 of them to make a bar or something. But that's all it is. It's just like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then you just put in some more bass drums to kind of makes it sound fancier than it is. But I will say it is a song where if you don't think about it while you're playing it, if you let your mind wander, you're fucking gone. It gets away from you very quickly, that song. It really gets away from you. But
yeah, that's the one where it tends to be slightly different every time we do it. Every time we play it in band practice, there's always something that, something we're out for like a couple of bars or something and have to figure out how to like all fall back in line. And we have there's a couple of little kind of tricks developed for that. But that one turned out really well. I mean, it was one of those ones that's always kind of, something on each of the albums where bring in something and we just go, what the fuck is this? We don't understand it, but it seemed like the logical one to us is kind of bit in the middle, which is kind of freeform, and we just we ended up with a loose arrangement for it. So when Andy did announce that he had bought a saxophone, we were kind of like, right, the saxophone going on our next album. It's as simple as that. It was like there's no way that it wasn't happening. So, there wasn't. We're not going to wait for 10 years for him to become a maestro. We don't need that for what we were doing there. It's putting grit on the song. You
can lose that with advancing as well. There's a certain point when you're learning an instrument where things are fresh and fun, and as you get better at it and you learn more things, you kind of lose a little bit of that and you gain a lot more, but you do lose a certain thing. But I think you've captured something here with the saxophone in its progress. That's really fucking cool.
There's nothing precious about it.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of modern prog is shit. Really. No, really, all joking aside, because that would never be on an album because it wouldn't be right. Or a lot of what we do would be taught out of the fact where there wouldn't be these bits where we'd lose ourselves. Or there wouldn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It'd be like fucking practically.
Imagine having a session player come in and playing the sax and asking him to do that. It'd be quite fucking difficult,
Let's go. Do stuff.
Just go mad.
You have to remember, though, again, well, with a lot of the kind of modern prog things, some of that shit is just, incredible musicians playing just disgustingly unlistenable music, to people like them, we probably sound like some fucking meatheaded like the Foreskins or something,
Certainly not, Boz. Right, track 4, Breakfast in Axum. Axum? Yeah.
So, yeah.
Ah, what a fantastic piece of music. That's what Yurt is all about for me. It's just incredible piece of stuff. Fantastic solo on it as well, Steve. The Kingdom of Axum. Tribalism. It's in northern Ethiopia. Boz, did you do much research into that, maybe from artwork, or how did you?
So the story behind this, and there is a fairly logical story. So myself and my brother were in Ethiopia, and it's kind of based on ideas, a couple of different incidents that happened, one in Axum and one in Lalibela, where the famous rock-hewn churches are. Now, there's a lot of the kind of Ethiopian Orthodox, I'll start that again, I don't know what that was. A lot of the Ethiopian Orthodox priests are fucking shysters, you know? Just the money grabbing and all that sort of thing. It's just really, really awful, you know? But so we had an incident. We had a run-in with somebody at the rock-hewn churches, not George's church, one of the other ones down in Lalibela, because there was a guy being really aggressive to us, one of the priest lackeys or something, you know, like demanding to see our passports and all this sort of thing. And we didn't know who the fuck he was. And so, there was we'd gone out onto the square. There's like a triangle kind of big area of dirt out in the front of them before you pay in. And we were looking, there was this kind of guy, blind guy, coming over with a walking stick and a can, looking for money. And he was way over the other side, and he kind of walked down there, and he took like this incredible L-shaped turn and landed like right in front of us and was walking towards us as if he was going to bump into us, So we had to kind of dive to get out of this guy's way. And we're like, that guy's not fucking blind, So this is the sort of shit you have to put up with. And we saw there was a number of incidents, but the one that kind of the song was based on, we went up to Axum. And in Axum, there's a church where it is claimed that the Ark of the Covenant is in either the crypt or an adjacent building. And it's too good, so you're not allowed to see it. You just have to take their word for it. This sort of shit, And of course, relics, big business. So this church or cathedral or whatever, it's a, the inside grounds of it has just become a magnet for the infirm and the insane from all the local villages and all the rest. So we were staying in a hotel that kind of overlooked it, and we were kind of discussing this and all this sort of stuff we'd seen that had happened. And we were sitting up on this kind of big flat area of concrete that kind of overlooked this. There's no fucking way the Ark of the Covenant is down there. It was breakfast time, so my brother was sitting there, and he was kind of like, he had a piece of toast with some marmalade or whatever on it, and we were sitting there talking shit about the Ark of the Covenant and talking shit about Holy God and all the rest. And he felt this kind of brush past his ear, and an Egyptian eagle swooped down and took his breakfast off him and just kind of disappeared up to the top of a broken sign and sat there eating it, We're like, fucker. So that's basically breakfast in Axum. That's what the song is about,
Brilliant.
Usual, but I mean, it made sense, to put those ideas together, and that's what came out of it, I don't know whether the logic of the way the lyrics lie in the song tell that story, but that's the story
that organ plays an important part in the song, that the busy riff and bass that's flowing through it, the organ just drifts in and out. It's, again, like even that whole song, it reminds me of Gojira's Magma album. I don't know, there's another curveball to throw at you, Steve, maybe?
Don't know it at all. I know of the band, but I've never actually listened to them, I don't think.
I've never listened to a guitar.
No, I've never listened to them either.
That's brilliant.
We're doing him a disservice by referencing Gojira, to be quite honest.
Early Gojira, come on, man. They're class.
You're doing Gojira.
You're doing Gojira a huge service.
Disservice, yeah.
There's too many bands. You haven't got a chance,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, no. Okay, right. Moving on to the Brand Evangelist, another favorite of mine. Lovely Pink Floyd vibe off this song, I must say. Surely, beat the fuck. Somebody can agree with me on this one.
We all like early the Floyd.
I think early Pink Floyd is something that you'll see definitely coming to the fore in a big way with the next album. That kind of, I would refer to it as the Relics era Pink Floyd. There'll be a lot of that in that. I mean, I think it's a huge thing. It's been something certainly I've been listening to since my mid-teens. It's something I always go back to. There's just endless fucking joy to be had from that stuff. It's just absolutely fucking fantastic. Where that comes from, I made a demo for that song with synths and just some drum samples and scratch vocals and some harmonies and stuff. The idea was to try and write something shorter by writing an entire song and bringing it in and sending the demo, emailing it to the others, so that we wouldn't kind of get away from ourselves like we usually do. Like maybe I would come in with ideas that would amount to a 6-minute song.
Yeah. And
then by the time we have put it through the Yurt blender, it ends up being a 12-minute song, because of just the nonsense that goes on. And it's great nonsense, but so another kind of thing like the Relics era Pink Floyd, another thing that I just been going back to like consistently throughout my life, music-wise, is Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, the Black Sabbath, you know?
Okay.
I was thinking like of writing something in terms of something like a Who Are You, kind of something with a synth bedrock on it, but kind of like a National Acrobat sort of thing as well.
Yeah.
It's got those two elements
Yes.
thrown in together. So I figured if we made a really high quality demo, we could actually use the synths of that, bring it into the studio, you know, put live drums on it, put decent vocals and guitar arrangements and all that sort of thing on it, and that would be it. There's no bass on that song. The bass is played on the synth, you know.
Okay.
So that's where that one came about, you know. And it was an interesting experiment in that it wasn't. We've never stood in a room and played that song together, you know.
What, really? And here I was thinking, if you could play that live, it would be just absolutely fantastic.
See, that's the thing, really. If you recall what I was saying earlier about, you know, not wanting to kind of deviate from sounding like a three-piece guitar, bass, drums band too much to the point where we become something else. That's borderline in terms of, I would call that a experiment. You know, I guess it's not necessarily a pop hit or anything, but we have done things on albums before where they've been kind of little electronic sketches and things like that. And that's building a whole song around that idea. I mean, I'm sure if we practiced it, we could throw out a version of it, but it would probably be quite different, you know? And by the time people are used to hearing that, and that's the one that's gone out prior to the album.
Well, of course, yeah, I forgot to say that it was a signal.
It would sound like that. And if you pull the synths off, it's not going to be as interesting, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that song, the only times I played that before we recorded it was in the rehearsal room. Was just, you had it on like an MP3 player, a phone or something, and we just mini jack it into the PA and play it, and I just try and learn it in front of them. See, in the studio, then we just went in and I just had to play it. I don't really like playing fucking clicks or anything. I find it kind of unnatural. But we played it and that was it. Then just took off the other drums and tidied up what I did, you know. And most of what wasn't written, I think, stayed on the track, bar the drums and the vocal and stuff, and then the guitars were added. So
yeah. So like when the album takes off, lads, and you're playing in the Olympia and people will start taking out the lighters, it'll be because of the brand Evangelist. Well, of course, the lighters are fucking gone now, so they'll all have their fucking lights on their phones, fucking shine them up at bars. You know, be almost Pink Floydish in the new era.
Don't play the hit. That's the trick, you know. Don't play gigs and don't play the hit.
The ultimate horror. No, yeah, lads, that track is absolutely outstanding. It's one of my favourites.
It's probably my favourite as well. It's the quickest guitar parts I've ever written for this band. Because once I heard that demo, I was like, right, I love this. Right, I have to get something together for this quickly, and I really enjoyed just writing. I sat down and wrote that very, very quickly. The guitar parts.
Really? Yeah.
It was very near to when we were recording, because I mean, I basically gave that to, we had already started writing stuff in rehearsal for Yurt 6 and like last year, you know. So probably a couple of different tracks on the go, like just in rehearsals, but I bought that in and went, here's another idea for Yurt 6, but I wasn't expecting everybody to go, no, let's put this on the album, it's ready, you know. So it came together really quickly, which is very unusual for a Yurt track. Usually the kind of gestation period is months, you know.
Yeah, and it's the shortest track on the album as well.
Yeah, I mean, another reason for that is airplay. You know, we're conscious of that. I mean, from the last time, you know, there have been a couple of people said to us, that's fucking, you know, when people are, you know, doing radio shows or doing doing something or whatever, a Mixcloud, and then suddenly they get on a local digital radio station or something, their show migrates to that, then suddenly they're down from however long they want for the show to maybe they get an hour slot. So they've got to be playing like 3.5 minute tracks, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, the other idea was to come up with something short that would be like a soundbite for it, you know?
Yeah.
Even if it's a little bit misrepresentative in that it's not anything we probably ever play live, you know? But, I mean, we hardly ever play live, so I mean, does that really matter? You know,
exactly.
we'll get away with it.
Yeah, it wouldn't be an issue. Exactly. We'll play one more gig, maybe. There'll be a release gig. We're asked to play another Irish gig. Maybe we'll do that, and those songs will be gone.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, last track, Mukbang. The obvious one to finish the album. Steve, maybe you could take that.
I think there was only. Yeah, I think we were all happy enough for this to be the ender. Yeah. Was there any debate over that, really?
No, it was the last one in. It made sense for the longest one at the end, where we don't bore people. You know.
Yeah.
We put long tracks at the beginning before, and it's not necessarily the greatest idea in the world. You know, it's good to have it. This was a great one for the end, though, because of the kind of the relentlessness, and it's got kind of like a drive to it, you know. So everything kind of really fell into place for this one. There wasn't an awful lot of kind of thought put into the sequence, you know.
Yeah, again, the vocals really stand out on this. Okay, I'm going to play it now. A very fitting end to a superb album, lads. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And a big shout out to Tommy O'Sullivan, who did a fantastic job mixing and mastering it and recording it. You've used Tommy before. How did you come across him?
Well, again, we were speaking earlier about kind of having an insular world.
Yeah.
Myself and Andy, we played in a band previous. Well, it kind of ran parallel to this for a few years. And there'd be another lineup with myself and other people, but Andy and Tommy played in the last lineup of that band for 10 years. Oh. So Tommy is just someone we already were playing with. So while Tommy was recording the early Yurt albums, we were playing in Estelle with him. So it just made sense to just follow it through. Basically, you know, he's a good engineer. He's one of our friends. You know, the price is right. He knows what we want to sound like. So, yeah, you know, that's it. Literally, Tommy is just someone that we've worked with for, like, since 2004. I've probably played music with him.
Wow.
And same, like, I've been playing with Andy for 20 years, probably, in different band. So he's just one of those people who's in our little circle of musicians, you know.
Circle of trust.
Yeah, you know, it's true. He works on other stuff we do, and yeah, he's just always there, you know.
What's great about working with Tommy as well is that he'll put a lot of extra work into like mixing stages and tweaking and all that sort of thing. Probably a little bit too much. I mean, I got to the stage there towards the end of this where when we were going for a final mix where I had to ask him to stop. We had like 8 different final mixes probably in 1 week, you know. And how would you get to listen to them, you know? It's already difficult to listen to this music at this stage after, you know, we don't sit down and listen to this and congratulate ourselves. I mean, it's the last thing in the world I want to hear. But, you know, when somebody's sending you 8 different mixes and there's something small and your ears are just broken, your brain is broken from listening to it. And you're going, I just stop. Leave us alone, you know. One mix every 1.5 weeks. Give it time for everybody to listen to it and decide what's different, you know. But he went above and beyond in terms of, you know, really, really investing himself in the project, and like he always does. I think this one in particular, you know, there's obviously, you know, there are things where it's hugely beneficial to him in terms of, you know, broadening the way he kind of engineers records, his approach to them, and he mastered it as well, which was for us usually we would get another set of ears to do that, you know. But we were kind of confident enough in Tommy to do it, you know. Plus we didn't want to kind of like record an album like this and then bring it to a metal guy to master it or whatever, you know. I don't think that's it just didn't seem like the right thing to do with this. It just kind of like pushes it slightly into kind of like a sound or like a dynamic that it doesn't serve it that well, you know. It kind of like, you know, any mastering engineer, they're going to kind of strip off anything that resembles a kind of like an older influence, you know. They're going to it's just going to be all blocked out into this kind of.
Well, it goes down to the trust element again, and the good communication you have all got with Tommy, you know. So why change it? Why? There's no need to, you know. And like, he's done such a good job mastering it now, so you don't have to worry about it for the next album, I presume.
Yeah. Well, that's it, you know. And he's a like I said, he's someone we've played with for a long time, and we've played in and out of bands with and stuff. So he knows what we're after. He knows how we sound. He's a exceptional guitarist himself. He knows how it should be, you know.
Yeah.
You don't have to give him a terrible amount of guidance. It's only really when it gets down to mixing stages that you have to guide him more, and that's usually left to the 2 lads. Once the drums sound okay, I'm happy to leave the mix to them so they can figure out where they want all their little bits to go and which bits they want to be louder and quieter, because it's not for my ears, you know what I mean? I would hear it all completely differently, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah. Howard, there's a huge benefit of settling with a guy that a band can trust. You have it with Shawnee Cads.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most fundamental thing for me with people like Tommy and so on is communication, and being able to communicate what you're trying to say and have them understand and react. But I think if you get into the business of telling people what to do, you're fucked. You know, I think you have to trust somebody to be good and competent at their job. And it sounds like he found someone like that in Tommy who just knows what he's doing, and you can kind of sit back and let him take what you've given him and be confident enough that he's going to give it back in the shape that you want it. You know, that's invaluable, because, you know, and it's great to hear he's sending you back 8 mixes. It's the enthusiasm he must have for it. But I feel you on that one. I mean, we're in the middle of mixing the Part 1 record at the moment, and I'm sick shit of it. Like, I'm sick to fucking shit of listening to the same 5 fucking songs over and over again, just to see, does that snare have more reverb than that one? I don't care, you know. You know?
Yeah, it leaves you with a weird feeling about it, because I mean, by the time you've got the thing out and you send it off, by the time it's back from the pressing plant, you're going, oh, I don't want to listen to this. Why would anybody want to listen to this? You
Not this.
don't have any confidence in it. It's just that the process of making it has made it completely repellent to you, you know. I remember there's a great.
It takes one out of it. You want to have a bit of enthusiasm when you're playing these songs, and I think if you listen to anything 100 times, you're going to be fatigued, you know.
Yeah, it was always a great thing that was requoted time and time again from an interview that Scott Walker did in The NME or something like that in the 90s, where somebody was talking to him about referencing the kind of new avant-garde music he was making from Tilt onwards, and they were talking about, oh, it sounds like something, you know, there's elements of this from, I don't know, Scott 2 or Scott 3 in the late 60s or early 70s, and he was going, I don't know, and they were like, when was the last time you listened to that? And he goes, oh, when we mixed it. I said, don't listen to any of my own music, you know, which was it was interesting, you know, but I mean, obviously we have to go and play these songs now at the launch gig, but looking forward to kind of getting them out of the way and getting them out of, you know, I think we're all looking forward to getting them out of our brains, you know.
Yeah.
It was funny, you were saying there as well about, you know, it's nice to not be in a situation where, you know, you have somebody telling somebody else what to do. I couldn't imagine that working. Imagine me walking into Yurt band practice and go, well, we're doing this now. I think we're all kind of on the same page in terms of the way that music works and what is kind of, it's not like necessarily what's acceptable in terms of, we just have a way of working, and that it works grand. We don't push ourselves too hard. We don't have any, I'd call it maybe outward ambition in terms of, you know, playing here and there and festivals and to attract attention to some fucking label or whatever, or, you know, none of that. But yeah, I think that we've found ourselves in a really good position, you know, really happy with the way things are panning out, because it kind of adds to the kind of longevity of what we're doing, you know. And I think as well, we're definitely getting better as a band. I mean, that's very plain to see. If we were getting worse or it was feeling tired, we would all know, you know. But you know, the fact that it's a comfortable thing to, well, not comfortable, it can be downright uncomfortable, but the fact that it's an interesting thing to do, it's a challenging thing to do, but it's progressing and it's moving forward all the time. It keeps it really, really interesting. I think it you know, it adds to, you know, the fact that, you know, we will probably, you know, who knows, we might be still doing this in 10 years' time, you know. Because, you know, it's a band with a very slow metabolism, and that kind of, it benefits the band in every way. It benefits the material, it benefits, you know, our tolerance for it, it benefits our just lives around it, and you know, it feeds it, you know. I think it's a really good way of operating, and strangely enough, not an awful lot of people do this, you know.
Yeah.
Interesting, the longevity that's occurred because that way thinking is 2006 to now is quite a stretch of time. I mean, how many bands have come and gone in that period of time, and to still be able to find enthusiasm, it's clearly down to the way that you think outwardly about your music, in the sense that you don't really care.
Well, I think, like,
here, you know, you find it in yourselves, which is great.
I think, like Boz said, it helps to not have ambitions, because I have found the bands that I've been in that work hard. Not that Yurt doesn't work hard, but bands that would like tour a lot, gig a lot, record a lot. When people like are sick and can't rehearse, or someone can't go on tour, it kind of breeds a resentment to a degree, where you're like, oh, this fucking prick, like, you're meant to be doing this thing and now we can't, and blah, blah, blah. And when you know that the goal is to just write and record an album every couple of years, it doesn't matter if, like, last week I couldn't rehearse and everyone goes, grand, see you next week. Whereas if you were working towards gigs, it'd be an issue. If you were working towards a fucking tour, it'd be an issue. You know what I mean? It takes that away. It makes it a band that's fun. You go in and we write and we kind of fucking challenge ourselves, and there's a social aspect to it, I'm sure. You know, we go in and we chat. It's there
is a fun element in this. I'm glad you said that, Bushey, because, you know, to hear you say that, it's great, man. Because I mean, you can definitely play around with with your music. And when I was listening to it, I was kind of going, geez, the lads were having really good time trying to figure this out. And there's so many different changes and structural ups and downs with each song, man. And that must be fun to do. I mean,
yeah, it is, man. I think it's funny. Look, I know we sit here and we're not going to say, oh, it's fucking complicated in this because we're too self-effacing. But it is complicated.
Yeah.
And there is enjoyment in figuring it out. And there is enjoyment in kind of the site. Like, basically, like we said earlier, Boz will come in with a piece. And then me and Andy, it's almost like trying to decode the piece then and figure out how we can put it in a structure that makes sense, you know.
Yeah.
And there is fun in it and kind of challenging yourself and pushing yourself. And it forces me as a drummer to play things that I wouldn't naturally play. Like, you know, bits that are like 7/4 or fucking having to play whole pieces in like sixes and, you know, trying to figure out how I can get to the end of a bar at the same time as what Boz considers the end of a bar, because what he is doing isn't conventional. And I'm like, well, I have to stop when you stop, but it's not as many as I'd do in another band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The beauty of not, you know, I guess the beauty of having no musical training and never having had any sort of lessons, not, you know, having to think about what the notes you're playing are, you know, if anybody ever asked you, is that, you know, you're not, and just the way we operate as well is that stuff gets brought to the table that's kind of ridiculous, you know, but the beauty of it is that because it's not a band designed as any sort of band, we're not playing to genre, we're not playing to a type, we're not anything, you know, it means that, you know, anything that comes in goes into the Yurt mixer and it comes out as Yurt music, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, whether we're, you know, you mentioned Gary Newman earlier, you know, as something you heard in the music. I mean, that's kind of interesting in that it's nothing that I would have ever thought about in terms of Yurt. But I mean, if we were to, for instance, you know, two different ideas that we're trying to put together. Maybe one was kind of like something based on an idea, a Charles Mingus idea, and another one's based on Bathory or something. And they meet in the middle ground. It's not like we're trying to do Mr. Bungle and throw them all into the same song and have the thing taken, you know, just weird left turns and stuff like that. That's not interesting, but there's a way to kind of blend all this stuff together. And, you know, just kind of really, really random ideas or just strange kind of, you know, bass patterns and stuff like that. That's a lot of the time, you know, just bringing in things and going, I don't really know how this works. A lot of the time when I'm kind of putting something together, if I come in with something that might be two different bass patterns that I want to put together that seem just completely ridiculous, when I'm in the process of writing, I'll bring them into band practice and go, can we just try this out for a minute? I want to see how this works or what the problems with it may be before I go and write fucking 9 minutes worth of music.
Yeah.
You know? So, you know, that to me is really, really interesting because, I mean, I get to, you know, it kind of reminds me that there are certain kind of parameters in that a lot of the time we just, things that I kind of play around with at home just don't work when you put drums over them, you know. I try. We do try a lot of the time kind of to retain the weirdness of these things. Sometimes it might leave an extra note in there somewhere, you know. But that's always really kind of interesting to me. I always find it fascinating just to put stuff together, and it's just, you know, that's the sort of kind of weird creativity where we're not kind of, you know, there's no pressure on us to go, you know, we have to follow, you know, changing trends in this type of music or that type of music, or now we have to sound like a fucking post-rock band, or now we have to sound like, I don't know, whoever, a post-black metal band, or now we have to sound like now we have to regress and sound like a 80s thrash metal band now that there's kind of the threat of nuclear war again, you know? So,
well, I mean, Steve has embraced the saxophone, man. Put a song on the next album that will sound like the J.J. Giles band and their Hall & Oates, you know?
Nuclear saxophone.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. You know, certainly, you know, now that that's kind of, you know, available to us, the great thing is being able to kind of write something that has, you know, kind of very basic parts in it where there's space for those things to go in there. Because I mean, obviously, if you're doing something noodly, and obviously myself and Andy can, like, you know, come up with parts for bass and guitar and something that sits on top of the drums or whatever. But, you know, if you're bringing in an instrument like saxophone that, you know, and it's basically a fresh instrument that nobody knows how to play, it's interesting to see what you can get out of it. And you can still get results from it, as you can see from the Book of Esophagus. I mean, I love that sax break in the middle of it. You know, that's straight out of the Stooges playbook, you know. I was thinking in terms of just squeaking and squalling, or back to early Hawkwind again, you know. There's no fucking, I mean, I don't know, that Steve McKay, I'll start the day. And Steve McKay, is he a trained sax guy, or is he
McKay was trained.
A jazz guy?
Yeah, he came up through kind of rhythm and blues.
Okay.
You know, but he was also kind of, he played an awful lot of kind of avant-garde music.
But yeah, the noise aspect of using an instrument like that is absolutely fantastic. It's absolutely brilliant to have it, you know. It's an eternal benefit to us, especially when we have you know, very obvious like jazz elements in the music. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
Yeah. Okay, so the album is coming out on the 12th of November. Upgrade to Obsolete. It's Yurt 5, and you can pre-order it through your Bandcamp page, lads. That'll be the easiest way of going about it, yeah?
Yeah.
Will you have copies available on the night? Because it's going to be launched on the 12th of November at the Bellow Bar in Dublin. Support will be from Objector Z, is it? Chrononaut?
Yeah, and
Dr. Count Evil.
Dr. Count Evil and Chrononaut.
Yeah.
The wonderful Chrononaut. The deal is you pay a tenner, you get the CD. Cool. There's no kind of like, I guess we'll bring kind of stock up. Looks very red on the camera. That's the way we've always done it. It goes back, I guess that goes back to the kind of the DIY, the underground punk thinking as well, is that, you know, you want people to hear the album, put it in their hands, you know. They're paying a tenner in the door. CDs don't cost a lot to make. I've seen bands do this thing of have a launch gig and then try and charge people for you know, 16 quid, 17 quid for the CD as well. There's no fucking chance, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, and on top of that, it's, you know, these things, what's a CD cost to us? You know, that could probably be about 3 quid a unit. We can afford to run a gig for a tenner and give them away to whoever's going to come in. I mean, we're not talking about hundreds of people, you know. It's a gig in the Bellow Bar in Dublin. What we do is very cottage industry. It's on a very, very small level, you know. Yeah. There's not going to be a queue of people, you know, outside. That the only people, well, majority of the crowd will be outside the bar, like smoking and yapping, such as the nature of these things, you know. Mm. But we just operate on a really small level, and you know, the CD gets to be part of the door price, and we've always been really comfortable with that. It works well for us, you know. I think it's a good deal, you know.
Yeah. Cool. Howard, anything else to say there?
Well, more than anything, it's a fantastic album.
Yeah.
And, you know, we listen to a lot of stuff here. We really do. We get sent things left, right, and centre. And, you know, Rich would send me a fucking 4-track EP, and I'd listen to it once and just cringe, you know, make it 30 seconds into a couple of songs. And it's hard going at times, I have to say. But this is the first one in a fucking long time. Like I said, I'm on a dozen listens at this point. I'm just instantly fascinated by it. Grew to like it a lot more as I've listened to True. And she's a contender for album of the year for me at this stage. It really is. It's that fucking good to me. So I hope people listen to it, and I hope people understand that as disparaging as you are about your own talents, this is real fucking music, really well performed by real fucking musicians.
I don't think we're disparaging about our own talents. I think we're like very happy with how we managed to kind of bluff to a certain level, you know.
I'm bluffing that like a fucking.
That's the honest truth about. I mean, we do kind of really push ourselves to the point where I don't know whether you would call it punching above your weight or whatever. I mean, the thing about it is that it's kind of, we just don't know what to expect when you put something out, because I mean, we're not part of anything. We're not part of a scene. We're not part of a group of bands. We're not part of the Irish metal community. We're not part of the punk thing. There is no, you know, we're pretty much on our own. We've, you know, maybe the lack of gigging and all the rest has really kind of isolated the band in a way, you know. I mean, there are people who know who we are, of course, from, you know, various places, but you know, when you put something out in the world like this, you just don't know how it's going to be received. You don't know what people are hearing when they hear it. You don't know what the reaction is going to be, and you don't know how it's going to be of any benefit to us. And that's the reason why we just kind of keep on moving forward with the blinkers on, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, you know, when black metal bands talk about cults, this is fucking cult, you know? This is true cult. We're not recording it in our bedrooms wearing our mask makeup, but it's true.
Steve Engelstad there.
No, thanks. I'm glad you enjoy it. You're both enjoying it.
Yeah.
That's nice to hear. Thank you, basically.
So, not only that, as you've probably figured out as well, Boz is a talented artist and he has a book, which I have here. And it's available, Boz, through your own website as well, isn't it? On Instagram under Boz Mugabe.
That's just bozgallery.com, yeah. That's where the book was on sale, yeah.
So for those that are listening, it's Divine Turbulence. He's worked from 2004 to 2014, and it's hardback book, and it's beautifully presented. And what prices on it at the moment, Boz? Do you remember?
I don't know. I keep on changing it.
Yeah, it's really good value.
There's probably some deal where it's like €15 in Ireland or something like that. You know, the price, I just keep on putting it down, you know. I haven't looked at it in a while, but yeah, it's there. It's available. It's not that difficult to find using Google, you know. So
fair play to you, man. I salute you on that one as well. So listen, lads, thanks a million for coming on the show. You've been listening to Steve, Boz,
Thank you,
and Bushey of Yurt. Really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate this.
Yeah.
Great stuff, lads. Really is.
Yeah.
Cheers, man.
Once again, the album is out on the 12th of November 2022 this year. And the launch gig, please go to it if you're in Dublin. You've no excuses. It's on the 12th of November in the Bellow Bar in Dublin, and support again our Objector Z, Chrononaut and Dr. Conteal. So crucially, lads, support your local metal scene. Thanks for listening to the show.
Thank you very much.